Hello.
Hi.
Do I sound quiet?
I sound quiet.
Because you're...
I am all the way down. How's it going?
I don't know.
I don't either. I'm officially unemployed, and the government has my name now. They have my number.
Yeah, so they're going to... So now, basically what's going to happen is the trade-off is going to be, even though you're a student, because you've been taking money from us, you're going to be instituted into the draft when we inevitably fight the Chinese.
Which is really cool. But I got approved, so I'm getting cash. And also, I don't know if it's just like California or something, or maybe just students, but they're not requiring people to look for work right now if you have unemployment.
Bitch, where?
I know, exactly. But previously, like, the requirement to be on unemployment was like, you have to be actively seeking out and applying for jobs. But my notice was like, hey, you just have to be available to work. And it's like, that's the only thing I am right now.
When they inevitably force us all to work for Amazon?
It's literally, yeah. Like, we're all going to end up getting jobs there. And they're working on something right now, but the legislation isn't there yet. So right now, just free up your schedule. You can be unemployed and get unemployment checks so long as if we call you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., you can go into work at the Amazon warehouse. I think that's what it's going to be, yeah.
It was pretty interesting. There was a guy, his name's Christian Smalls. He was the one that was a whistleblower for the conditions in the Amazon warehouse and was like doing a strike to get medical equipment and stuff to protect them. And then Amazon fired him and said the reason why they fired him was because he wasn't respecting social distancing and that he wasn't articulate.
It's so stupid and so ableist, dude.
So, yeah, throw it back to 15 minutes ago. But and then Jimmy Dore interviewed him, and he was very bright. I mean, yeah, no kidding. Not high school educated, but not inarticulate. It was so obviously a smear. And then there's like an internal memo that just leaked from Amazon about how to smear him to mitigate like workers' strikes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Pretty fucking interesting.
And it's like, if you are going to become a strike leader or like an opposition leader, you're not going to be a dumbass. You know, like he's obviously intelligent and articulate enough to have taken a leadership position to lead sort of like an Amazon.
Well, he was the manager of that warehouse as well. So,
well, there you go. Like, he's already moved up enough to be in a position where he has power.
Right.
You know.
Right. So anyway,
it's stupid. Amazon is
the richest
demonic
man in the world. I think it's $140 billion he's worth.
Yeah. He's so cool.
It's really cool to have my Prime payment come through today, too. That was...
What, did you call them?
No, I mean, what am I going to... they're not going to give it back. So it's like... But it's like, the only reason why I thought about calling them was to be like, your service isn't really working right now anyway. So it's like, why do I even need this right now? But I just don't... I think that they... And then... I'll think about it. I'm fine.
I would call them. I waited even like a full week to call them before I got my refund. So they aren't going to be like, well, you missed your 24-hour window to refund your Amazon payment. They'll refund it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll think about it.
If you cancel, that is. So I don't know.
So Sean, as we showed you in the last one, is making masks.
I am making masks.
And it has gone off like gangbusters. Now you have a bunch of orders.
It's scary, dude.
Oh shit. Oh good.
Yeah.
Oh yay.
Hello. So we already have a person here. This is Pierce.
So
hello.
Just give us 1 second. If you come into the Zoom chat or the Zoom video thing, make sure to mute our stream or get out of it, or else we hear the echo in our head.
Yeah. And in the meantime, do we have more to catch up on before we start?
I just wanted to show the clip of the WHO talking about the masks, and then
we'll have people mute their mics.
Yeah.
First, and then we'll talk about
so
the masks.
it'll be a second, and then we'll get into the Zoom chat. And if you're watching the live stream now, the Zoom chat meeting ID and the password is in the description of the video, and also on our Twitter and wherever else. So really quickly, I want to show this video from the WHO because they were telling us that we shouldn't wear even bandanas or anything to cover our mouth, and now
last week they were saying
they've reversed course. So this is about a 2-minute clip, and then we'll get to the Zoom chat.
We must preserve medical, surgical, and respirator masks for our frontline workers, but the idea of using respiratory coverings or mouth coverings to prevent coughing and sneezing, projecting disease into the environment or towards others. That's a mechanical process, and that in itself is not a bad idea. But that doesn't negate the need for hand washing. It doesn't negate the need for physical distancing. It doesn't negate the need for people to stay at home if there's a stay-at-home order in place. It doesn't negate the need for everyone to protect themselves and try to protect others. So we can certainly see circumstances in which the use of masks, but homemade or cloth masks at community level, may help in an overall comprehensive response to this disease. And we will support governments in making those decisions based on the situation they find themselves in terms of transmission, based on the context in which they're dealing and the resources that they have at their disposal.
All right, we get
That's all we need.
Yeah, so it's
basically backpedaling to be like, yeah, cloth masks and homemade ones are actually helping you.
And it's tough because it's like we've played on several other episodes about how much they've lied to us. Again, important to remember the WHO are the ones that told us in early January that there is no evidence that this virus can be transmitted from human to human.
So stupid.
Anyway,
same one whose clip we showed on
the Taiwan thing.
Yeah,
where they just basically shut out that reporter because they're carrying water for the Chinese. But
yeah, of course.
Anywho, let's get into Zoom here.
Sweet. I think we lost Pierce.
Oh, bummer. Okay, so
that's okay. We're in, you guys.
There we go.
Yeah. Again, if you guys are new to like our Zoom chat thing, which actually it looks like everybody who is here has been here before, but you're only going to see Jordan on the Zoom window, but you'll still see me on the stream. I'll still be sitting here.
Let me double check that I have the sound correct here.
Yeah.
Yep, it's still good. Got it.
Great. So if anybody, I don't know, if you have anything to say, let's hear it.
Now's the time to say it. Oh, we got Marco, we got Nianoni, and we got Dallas.
Sweet.
In the chat.
I love it.
And we got Greg.
Awesome.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can.
Yes, we can hear you. So, how is everything going on in your states, or provinces? Excuse me, for our Canadian friend. Since we talked to you guys last. Oh, somebody's still connecting audio. I guess Greg, what's it like there for you?
Nothing has really changed so far. I've heard talks of things being extended to April 30th with the shelter in place, but I've not seen anything real or concrete from the state of Indiana or the governor. So everything's the same pretty much, just quiet.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think people kind of forget that it's, the way that this country works is so state by state basis, depending on what they end up doing. I think Trump's official guideline was April 30th. That's going to get extended. We all know
absolutely
it's going
to. It is.
But then you have states like Virginia with Ralph Northam who have made the stay-at-home order June, the end of June, and so, or I think maybe June 1st actually. So that means that he wants to extend it through April, May, June. But I suspect the official federal guideline is going to come through and probably be. We're just not going to have a summer or whatever the hell that means.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Summer 2020 is not happening. It's not on the menu.
No. But. Let's see. So,
Greg, I don't know if you heard. I'm on the unemployment paycheck list on payroll now. So
I did catch that. Congratulations. Welcome to the team.
You.
It's great to have you.
It feels great. I feel a true solidarity with all of my fellow unemployed people who are getting paid by the government to do nothing right now.
It was interesting that you said that they're not requiring you to look for work because the Indiana unemployment website, first of all, is just absolute trash. But
so is ours. It's so bad.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
But so they stated that you have to, when you're originally signing up for unemployment, they're like, you have to log your job finding activity and submit it weekly. Well, then when you go do submit weekly, there's no way to submit it. And they just give you a template and be like, fill this out and keep it for your records in case we ask you for it. We might not ask you for it, but in case we do, here's the template. And there's nothing to do with it. So we'll see either tonight or tomorrow. I'm submitting my voucher for this week. We'll see if they put a note in about not having to log it or not. But it's complete. Just hold yourself accountable just in case.
That's awful.
You could totally just BS all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll just all say that we're all planning on working at Uber, McDonald's, Amazon, Bezos, fuck me in the ass corp here shortly. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it's all headed. But Marco says that Georgia governor opens beaches a day after issuing statewide stay-at-home order. Jesus fucking Christ!
Why would he do that?
I don't know. And again, it's like when you do these kinds of things, then people just end up flocking in large amounts too. Because like, you know what has been so revealing to me is that how people just cannot handle not having like friend human interaction, like, or they need it to be like in person.
Human
friend interaction, like the idea of just like being kind of a person that just kind of naturally isolates like I do. People that are the opposite of that, like more extroverted people, are fucking losing it. Like already.
I used to see friends like every other week, and when I was doing that, I was like, I could probably do without this, you know. And now I have friends who are suffering right now for being like alone. I mean, luckily they have like roommates and stuff, but a lot of people who don't know how to handle this.
It's interesting. Jacob Larson says a little over 1 million total cases, which we expected yesterday that was going to go over 1 million. 810,000 active cases, 228,000 recovered, 39,000 serious, 60,000 dead.
Yeah.
Whew.
So just to follow up on the Amazon thing with the not the Amazon thing, but the WHO thing with the masks. So is the assumption now that they like intentionally lied, basically, to stop a rush on masks?
I'm assuming that's why. That's the safe assumption, yeah. And frankly, I mean, it's interesting. I saw an article, like literally right before we started from, it's all over the place, but 3M, which is a company up in Minnesota, was what we saw.
They're no longer sending them to us.
No, Trump wants them not to, but they're saying that they still want to, and it's like,
of course,
it's so complicated. Because again, it's like if we don't have enough, the thing is I think that like every country right now needs to just not really be looking to anybody else for assistance just for a minute. It's like. It sucks and it's fucked up, but I think that we all kind of have to be pretty hyper nationalistic at this moment.
Well, the reason, and there's no excuse for the lie that the WHO, like, there's no excuse for that lie when people could have been protecting themselves in any way they could by wearing like a bandana or whatever.
Why they did it, though. Like
I understand why.
I get it.
It never made any sense to me, like previously, like when they said like, oh, masks won't do anything, and I'm like, well, that doesn't really make any logical sense based on everything else you're telling me about this, that it can exist on surfaces, that it can exist in the air for periods of time.
Right.
Like,
it
doesn't make any sense.
And like it was, I mean, even like, you know, Dr. Drew, somebody I've been listening to.
I wanted to talk about him.
But like people were asking him about just what about even wearing a bandana, and he's like, well, I'm not really going to make any. He said I'm not going to make any certain determinations about how effective that would be against spray, but at the very least, it gets you to stop touching your face because you have something covering it. So
yeah, I know that's true. Yeah,
it logically just makes sense. But at the same time, it was interesting. So I went to the grocery store for the first time in a while yesterday and wore the one that Sean made me. And I felt pretty protected by it, like especially looking at the people who had the flimsy paper ones. I'm like, how can these be doing fucking shit? There's giant gaps in the sides of them and whatever. But also, like, you're some asshole that took this now from somebody who's going to need it much more than you do. And so, it was interesting. Like, or I felt like weirdly self-righteous being the one that was wearing one that was like not taking one from somebody who needs it more than I do, but
so much more stylish though. That's really
absolutely,
and that's ultimately what the reality is on that for me, and like what I care about, and it did turn some heads, I gotta say.
Absolutely, it did. I know.
I will say that following up on like every man for themselves philosophy in terms of countries, we are sending you guys doctors. So just keep that in mind.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
we're joining Cuba.
There's a lot of countries sending us doctors right now.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, Cuba.
Look, I think that like when the dust settles on this, like I'm actually curious what Marco will have to say about this, or Neononi if he's able to chat. I don't know if he is yet.
I'm here.
Oh, yay.
Yay.
So uh-oh. Are you at an airfield? So what was I gonna say? Shit.
You're talking about other countries.
Yeah. So
when the dust settles on all of this,
I am convinced that we are going to start to look at like a Monroe Doctrine situation here in the United States, which is essentially like that phrase has evolved a lot over time, but like essentially the way that I understand it at this point would be like Canada, us, and parts of like Central America and South America just become one unit. and I
essentially we've always kind of been that
in a way.
Yeah. Like, because I mean, like, Mexico is your workforce, and Canada is like sort of a feeding colony, and then you guys are the hub. You're the city, and we're the small town next to you.
Essentially,
Basically,
yeah.
yeah. You know, I mean, like, I don't necessarily want to go on that like kind of EU path where we all have we all have the same currency.
No, neither do I.
Destruction. Especially if you look at Italy, they're not doing so well, and I think that's a big part of it is the fact that they're, you know, they've had like what's the word? Like, they've had so much reductions because they've had so much debt because they don't control their own currency. So they.
Well, that's the problem is when you're in these when you end up in something like the EU, and like the most, you know, prevalent example economically with like after 2008 in particular, Greece did not get their shit together at all. Like they just, and then the whole EU has to carry the burden of Greece's corruption and bullshit and like being a total fucking mess after it. And so it's like that's the kind of the problem too, is of like the mismanagement of countries. Like, for example, like, you know, it would be great for us to control Venezuela, for example, because they have a fuckload of oil and we could like get out of the Middle East, like in theory. But then we also have to deal with trying to like put in a puppet government into Venezuela to do our bidding and not tank our currency if it was connected to them. And that's not a prospect that I'm particularly thrilled about.
I'd rather have inflation than have austerity measures where I'm gutting all the social services, like, you know, like African countries and stuff where they take like big loans from the UN bank, the World Bank, and then they end up like not being able to pay them back because it's kind of how they're structured to kind of intentionally do that. Not that Greece is the same situation, but I'm just saying like those kind of austerity measures where like you're constantly owing someone else is just like the worst scenario to be in.
Sure.
Way worse than inflation, I would say.
But there's also the Zimbabwe scenario with the inflation just, you know, skyrockets to the point where money is literally worthless.
Yeah.
Well, in Zimbabwe, it's like the whole thing is like smaller countries and countries that have not really gotten their start are just so full of corruption. And there's every incentive to, and this is like, I don't know why you're laughing. Is this is this a racist dog whistle?
Well, no, it's just, I mean, do we really, I mean, at this point, like, how long does Africa need to get their shit together? I mean, give me a fucking break.
The thing is,
okay,
like,
they are,
no,
for a second. They are intentionally fucked. They have been intentionally fucked for generations.
Dude, no.
The UN did that intentionally. The World Bank gave them loans. They knew that they couldn't pay back. I'm just saying, like, Africa. Yes, I do think that ultimately, I'm going to believe the full liberal in terms of that they have always been holding the bag intentionally. Like they're always the sort of the person that people fuck over intentionally, knowing that they can always lean on the fact that Africa's always, you know, fucked. So it's Anyway,
it does come down to the leadership of certain areas. I mean, it's not like. There are definitely countries in Africa that are doing better than other ones, but the ones that are consistently bad, and like again, like I really have hated like the colonialism argument of like why they're so fucked to begin with, and it's like so much of like what we ended up kind of coming into and taking from them were like resources they were already enslaving their own people before we even got there. It's like slavery was not a concept that like we created, and so it like they, and again, it's like you look at every country that has an opportunity.
You could say the same at the time. You could say the same thing about white countries. I mean, if you're going back that far, I mean, like slavery was a relatively, a normal concept. You know, when there was debtor prisons. I mean, even the States, you could argue, has forms of slavery, like in the prisons.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, I'm just saying.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I want to get back to like.
We'll get lost in the weeds on that.
I want to get back to like the corruption argument because like Greece, as you mentioned before, massively corrupt, and it's like. So these countries got so knocked on their asses in these last recessions, and they're obviously going to be paying the same price this time, or this last recession, I meant to say. But like, so corruption breeds itself in inflation. It breeds itself in like these massive loans that you can take out because a few people at the top of these countries can benefit from the suffering of many in their countries. So Greece again Greece completely went bankrupt and had austerity is what Jacob says. And it's like, same with like Germany in World War II, their inflation went sky high because they had to, take out loans. They had to cut all social programs. They had to take all of the savings from the banks that were given by the people. So it's like people were not allowed to have savings. All the money went to the German government to try and rebuild But because of that, inflation, of course, destroyed the economy for decades.
But even then, it's like, so like World War II is super modern history if you really want to get into it.
Yeah.
And Germany is like one of the most industrious kind of kick-ass places.
Yeah.
Like, and again, so. But again, we can get really fucking lost in the weeds on why that is, and I'm not even gonna go there because it could get really dark and Jared Taylory here quickly. So
don't do it, please.
Well, I mean, it's complicated because everybody. Sorry, it's complicated because everybody always talks about culture and money, but they never talk about resources because no one ever knows what they're talking about.
Africa is so fucking rich with resources, especially like in the smartphone era. Like China is already raping the fuck out of Africa right now.
But in reality, like
almost
Africa
literally a gold mine
seems to be the antithesis of wealth in most cases, because there's the whole thing with resource poverty, where if you discover something of value in a place, the consistent theme is if you discover something of value in a place that otherwise didn't have wealth to begin with, the outcome is almost always that the people that live there are going to be worse off.
But isn't it dependent? It's dependent upon the leader of that country to make good negotiations. That doesn't happen, and I think that the leaders of these countries don't really care about the
foreign influence, though. I mean, they are being like you have like Cuba and you have your banana republics that are being manipulated by larger countries and corporations to fuck them over. I mean, that's the game.
But you still have to be willing to be fucked. And like, that's the thing is, like, what you find in all these African countries are the warlords get fucking rich. Like, we send them a bunch of iPads to school children, and then it's like, well, now a warlord gets thousands of iPads. Great. It's like none of this shit ever gets distributed in the way that it's supposed to. And it's like, and so, like, I'm just done. I'm done really apologizing for them, or like, because it's one of those things of like, I'm of the opinion like that it's a lost continent. I mean, because they have so much resources that we need, especially right now. I mean, it's unbelievable what they have, and they have the opportunity. And like Nigeria even has done a relatively decent job in the grand scheme of the continent. Like they're pretty wealthy, like generally speaking. So it's not like every country in Africa is fucked, but so much of it is.
I want to
and perpetually for not even in since American history. I mean, it's been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
So
I think the States kind of intentionally does that to a degree. I mean, isn't that kind of their business of instilling dictators in small countries?
That's kind of my point.
Intentionally manipulating elections so that people that they can use to then gain their resources at a cheaper price. I mean, that's something you guys have done in many places.
But again, for instance, like someone like Mugabe getting elected, like the United States wasn't responsible for that happening, and so it's like, and it was a democratic vote, and they kept putting him in, and he was somebody who was like sitting on hordes of cash and jewelry and tigers. The dude was out of his fucking mind. I mean, like when he died, I remember seeing the article and being like, thank God. It's just, I mean, it's almost like you had to respect how corrupt he was.
Culturally speaking, you guys aren't, obviously with Trump, you guys aren't beyond doing that yourselves in terms of
no, of course not. But again, it's one of those things of like, they're just, my point is even bringing up Africa is it's not even like really analogous to really any Western country, because how do we even get here?
I don't know. I wanted to talk more about like the aftermath of what countries will do that are not big like us, like the U.S.
Yes.
Who like so. We will obviously survive this. Canada, Mexico, most of Western Europe, like if like they don't get wiped out by this virus, then they'll come back and eventually grow back to be as strong as they were beforehand. But countries that are already so poor and not so well off, we are not going to reach out to them after this is over. You know, we're not going to help them, and they'll just be even worse off than they were before. I think that was what I wanted to get at before we got onto all of whatever this shit was. But like there are countries that, and yeah, in Africa, Greece, and like these countries will suffer a lot now because they were not in a stable place, but they will continue to suffer because after this fact we'll think, oh, it's over for us, we're done, we got through the virus, and then they will continue to suffer. I mean, did we bail out Greece when the
EU did?
The EU bailed them out,
but it didn't really do anything.
It didn't help them. So like, why would we bail them out again, or why would the EU bail them out again?
I think that like after the dust settles on this, like I think that it's going to be Brexit in every country.
Yeah.
In the EU.
Here's a comment that we should talk about from Marco that he sent to you in the Zoom chat. Right on the heels of a seasonal depression, we're going into self-isolation. Here come the suicides.
Yeah.
And Dr. Drew has been talking about that for quite a while. So he's been saying in the last few episodes I've heard him do on Dr. Drew After Dark and Where My Mom's At, which he's done with Christina P., a comedian we like. comedian that we like.
Comedian.
He's talking about like suicide rate is going to go up. People will not know how to handle this kind of thing. And we talked about on some of my streams. I think both of my two recent streams. Emily Owen, the girl who committed suicide in I think England is where she was from.
Could she have just waited a few fucking I don't know, like it's so fast.
It was very fast, but the thing is, like, she told her family that like suicide was going to be more deadly than the actual virus where she lived.
I don't know, like, as somebody who's had really severe depression, I'm kind of it's like sort of thing of like I just don't really there's so much uncertainty about what could happen that I don't really. Why do you not want to kind of just wait and see what's going to happen? And
that's probably just the reason that she was just wanted to end herself.
Yeah, they're probably
she just couldn't handle the uncertainty of the world collapsing around her.
Perhaps, yeah.
Like if I owned a cruise line, I could understand the concept of suicide.
Yeah, but also fuck them, because all of them were flying flags that like they weren't paying taxes because they all were registered to other countries. So fuck that whole industry. And honestly, like, who goes on cruises? Who are they? Honestly, can we just let them keep going on them and get the virus and just go away?
A big Chuck E. Cheese on a boat, like a big Chuck E. Cheese on the ocean. That's what it is.
It's giant man children.
It's just disgusting.
It's the worst. So
I don't know if man children do it. I feel like it's boomers. Boomers are the ones that want to go on cruises.
A lot of like Midwestern people, probably people from the middle of the country.
It's that dude that
you're like in a giant hotel and you're technically going somewhere, but not really at the same time.
Yeah. It's that dude that we played on our podcast. It's the guy who went on Fox News or whatever with his kid and was coughing and then drank the water bottle and gave it back to her.
And he wasn't that dude. He wasn't.
That's the demographic.
He wasn't a boomer, but he was just like that man's. That man is basically like a liquid, and he takes whatever shape you pour him into, like whatever container holds the liquid. Just a nothing person of like any degree. But I want to move into something. I want to kind of get into like. So I talked about it yesterday on the regular podcast that we did, talking about predictions, because I think 2 days ago, sorry, where like globally there are going to be serious, every nation is going to be looking to have consequences for China, and like we're seeing the rhetoric be pretty bipartisan against what China did. So I'm curious to ask Neon Oni what his prediction is in terms of what our long-term outcome is going to be with China.
Well, I mean, see, here's the thing. I think there's going to be a time from here on, even after this thing settles, where we're still going to be dependent on them. I mean, we can't just overnight pop up factories and, do all that stuff. So we're going to be dependent on them for a bit. And there's two scenarios. Either in that transition time, we kind of ease up and kind of let bygones be bygones and forget. I don't know if that's even a possibility because this is so immense.
Right.
Or, like my fear is that the economy stays so, the depression is so stagnant that there's kind of a push towards war, which, because there's still that kind of belief that World War II got us out of the Great Depression.
Right.
Where, kind of creates a lot of opportunity otherwise that isn't there.
So like you're kind of like leaning into the idea that if we were to escalate some sort of warfare with them, every nation who's going to be on our side, which is going to be most all the ones that matter, Japan, India, Brazil, the EU, Canada, even maybe, are going to just be buying weapons from us, and that could theoretically be what we are going to try to position ourselves to use to get out of this.
There's a good chance of that. But remember, one of Russia's main industries that's still kind of lucrative for them is also weapons production.
That's true.
You can start seeing, kind of NATO nations even kind of warming up.
Yeah, I've wondered about that, actually. I was really curious whether or not that would happen.
I don't know. Are you familiar with the 3 Cs, the new deal with the a bunch of the Baltic and Eastern European states? They're trying to 3 Cs, meaning the C's and the reason, not the letter C. It's kind of like
I don't know about this.
It's pretty interesting. It's basically kind of a new Eastern European version of NATO, and we're of course committing. Well, before this whole thing went down, we were committing billions and billions and billions for them to build this infrastructure to make the 3 Cs kind of interconnected, so they could have their own but their own Eastern European economy that kind of, the whole hope is to give them kind of an economic stimulus where they can kind of be more of a threat to Russia in the in the future, kind of create a
But
buffer between them.
do you think it could ultimately make them more amenable to Russia?
I don't really know. It can go either way. And again, last week you brought up the fact that what does Russia do now with the whole China situation? Because we've kind of forced them in a position where their only allies are China. Because here's the one thing. One of the big hopes that I had for Trump when he was elected was the fact that he wanted to kind of create, he wanted to decrease the rift that we have with Russia after the whole Crimea thing.
Right.
And unfortunately, the whole, RussiaGate scandal forced him to go the opposite. As
Right.
Michael Tracy's always talking about, he became almost like, to prove that he's not this Russian asset or this, Putin asset.
He like overshot it.
Yeah. And so now we've kind of, we're so used to thinking on the short term and with this Cold War mentality that we've kind of pitted China and Russia together, the two main nuclear threats in this on this planet, and now
Which is what
we have hostility toward both.
think of what think what you will of Tulsi's decisions now, but I mean this was basically what her whole messaging platform was based upon, and so
And
it's
my feelings. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I think that your criticism of her is
No.
is valid for sure. But,
No. I was bringing up my feelings towards her. In general, to point out that I always have really applauded and found a lot of value in her message towards foreign interventionism and all that stuff, and that's
and not
that's
escalating this into a new Cold War anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that it's inevitable that we're going to go into one. But the question that I have for you or kind of anybody else is like, do you think it's possible? Because China carries the debt of so many nations right now. So like, could potentially, if they're willing to, which I don't think is likely. I'll preface with this: if they're willing to take some sort of accountability, does it seem completely out of the realm of possibility that they might be willing to forgive some debt that they carry for other countries?
I don't know enough to have an answer for that. I mean, it really does depend on kind of a cooperation of all other nations really putting it to China, or but again, China's in a position where they still have that ability to call our bluff.
Right.
I have a theory.
My understanding is that, well, I mean, I don't know. I've heard recently that like the idea that China has a complete hold on the United States over debt is a somewhat overrated claim. That, I mean, like countries like, say, for example, Japan have just as much of a stake in the United States as China does.
Sure.
Financially speaking.
I mean, the big evidence of it was when the market tanked Christmas Eve, not this last one, but the one before that, and China's economy took a huge dip when that happened too. So we have this kind of inextricable link to them financially that so it was kind of evidence of like, well, how much cachet does that debt they actually carry? How much weight does it actually have? And it kind of proved to me in that moment, well, not much, because if we fail, they fail because we're buying all their dumb shit. So it is pretty inextricably linked. But I mean, in terms of like my thinking of why this would be the best case scenario is that I don't think this UBI it's going to turn into UBI. Like, I don't really believe that this is going to be a 1-time, 2-time, or even a 3-time payment. This is going to be something that's like going to have to keep happening, or else
this is like the income tax of welfare, where like it starts and you think it's going to end, but in reality, just from the necessity of we don't know when this specific disaster is going to end, that it'll just sort of continue on and people get used to it.
That idea generally, but the problem is that if we do that, which I don't even think it's really a negative thing to do it, but the problem is that the inflation is going to get retarded, and so like that's kind of what I'm concerned about, because. Well,
Isn't that a question of resources, though, to a certain degree? I mean, that's what I always sort of question with the inflation thing, is that for certain things, isn't the price kind of inflated like innately? And that even if you gave it to like there's lots of things in the economy that are not based on they're based on copyright or some kind of legally innated, like medicine, for example, where like insulin, for example, could, if you could mass produce it and make it at a cheaper rate, but they intentionally don't. I mean, like, I just think that some aspects of the economy aren't really that rare, and that those don't need to be that expensive. Is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. I mean, like in this crisis has definitely highlighted that. I mean, like for example, we have MIT provide the schematics for 3D printing a ventilator, and it costs $100. And this company that has been price gouging hospitals forever, it costs $30,000. I think I said something similar on one of the ones that we did recently, where it's like, you go in to get an MRI and it's prohibitively expensive because the machine costs so much fucking money, the hospital has to pay for it. So it's like, but the technology is not that, I mean, it is complicated, but it's not really. It's it's magnets that kind of like resonance imaging. I mean, it's what an MRI is.
Well, the
so
fact
it's
that like they're able to sell to us similar, not specifically what you were saying, but the fact that especially in the medical field, the fact that they're able to sell things to other countries for like 1/10 of the cost would imply that they don't actually need that much money to produce it. Anyway, yeah.
Ideally, I mean, but I don't know. Like, I'm obviously not an economist, but it's one of those things of like, it just seems like logically when you're just printing money, inflation is naturally what ends up happening. So I don't know. Do you?
That's
sure,
the
yeah.
only...
I mean, but we don't really know. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen for a lot of aspects of the economy, because certainly lots of things are limited. But I do think that some things are kind of false scarcity in terms of the capitalist system. That's
Sure.
more about ownership than it is about how much you can produce. Because if an individual or a small group of people are only able to produce something, then they can jack up the price to try to artificially inflate the economy, which is something the US does a lot. Like, I feel like that's your entire healthcare system, is a false sense of actual inflation, that you don't actually need all this money in it. Now, like, it is partially, I think, motivated by research and like producing new forms of medicine and like, advancement, but then a lot of that is just greed.
Sure. You want?
I mean, the only way inflation happens is money supply. There's more money supply than we can keep up with. GDP it's like a graph the graph is basically money supply and GDP.
So if like GDP isn't meeting the match for what we're printing.
Exactly.
Right.
There should always be, it's always healthy to have 2 to maybe 3% inflation yearly. And that's sort of just how it always is, and like how it is observed in other countries as well. A 2 to 3% yearly is about what we should be seeing. If there's anything less than that, or if it goes down to like 1%, or it goes down to like 0.5% yearly, that's actually really bad for the economy. It's awful. But
why?
It's called, I think, deflation.
Does that mean we're slowing down?
It means we're slowing down, exactly.
Okay.
So deflation is awful for the economy, and we saw it, I think, in there was a recession in 2007, 2008, so we saw that a ton then. It, like, surprisingly, like, prices went way, way down, and so the inflation rate, of course, dropped because the amount that we were spending, we were trying to match it to the GDP and inflation rate. So basically, like, prices went way, way down, and it's like, oh, well, of course prices are down. People are going to buy so much more. That wasn't the case. People weren't buying anything during that recession.
Right.
So, like, there is a healthy amount of inflation that you can have, and it's like 2 to 3% yearly. But in the case of like medical things, like pharmaceuticals going up in price, use that as your gauge. If it's $30 this year and it's $31 the next year, like, that's not that big of a difference. But if it's $30 this year and $100 the next year for like a simple machine or something, that's gouging. There's something wrong there that needs to be, or maybe there's new legislation or something that increases the price of it. But I don't know. And I think, like, of course we'll see an obvious deflation, and we're already seeing that with gas prices right now.
Yeah.
With coronavirus. Like exactly, gas prices are so down. It's like $2.70 where I live in California. That's unheard of.
And that's with all of our crazy
even
gas taxes.
Premium prices were like $2.99. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Never.
No, I've even seen some stations where regular is sub $2, which I've never ever seen that before.
That's
and especially because we already have like a 25-cent gas tax as well. Like, plus like our regular sales tax.
But tell me, when was the last time you got gas?
I got it today.
Okay, you got it today. Before that, when was the last
it'd
time?
been 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
So you got gas today after 3 weeks of not getting gas. Prices are so fucking down because they want it to sell, but nobody's buying it.
Right.
I haven't filled up my gas tank in 2 weeks.
Right.
And I should, because it's at 270 and I'm pretty low on gas, but I don't need to right now. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So we're going to see, obviously, and we can witness it right now, the obvious deflation of our economy.
Really quickly, though, I want to make it pretty clear that, like, I think what you're seeing in the medical sector is a combination of, like, 4 different problems that, like, in this, I think I touched on a version of this. I'm not going to say I'm some kind of soothsayer that predicted this, but it was like, it's why I would get mad at Bernie for talking about a blanket Medicare for all that would just get the insurance companies that are a $600 billion industry to throw up their arms and go like, well, we give up. We're not going to do anything anymore. I'm just like, that's not really realistic. Like, I like the idea. I like the intention. I think it's a good intention. But I do think that I if I had the means to then buy a private insurance to not have to do it through the government, as we're all finding by going to the unemployment website and how much of a horseshit dick nightmare that is, it just shows of like, do you really want your, like, if you have the choice to not have your healthcare tied up in that system, do you want that? Of course you do. So like, the thing.
But there have been countries that have gone from a single payer system to a multi-tiered system, and in actuality, it's increased wait times. So it hasn't actually benefited a lot of, like, if we're talking about, like, say the Nordic countries, there have been Nordic countries, like, I'm not sure specific, I think it was maybe Denmark, but they went from one system to the other to sort of open it up, to try to improve things, but in reality, it just made things worse.
I think that the tough part, though, and I don't think you're, I believe that the thing is, it's like, you just cannot really compare our system to any other one. It's like, we are in a very unique quandary, like, and especially like, and because but there's so many different factors to it. Like, number one, the cost of education for doctors is way too fucking expensive. Yeah. Number one. Number two is the amount of loans they take out on that. Then of course, like, they're going to have to charge a higher salary to pay back those loans. So that's problem number two. Problem number three is that this has now become more evident as this crisis has happened, is that all these corporations that make medical products have been gouging on prices. And basically, hospitals are beholden to it. So, like, why does New York only have 10 respirators in one hospital? It's because it costs $30,000 a piece. So, like, if it's an item they didn't feel like was necessary, it's like, well, we're not going to dump money into something we don't really think we're going to need if it costs this much money. But now we're finding that it doesn't actually cost as much money. But these companies, like, unfortunately, ones that my family was involved in, it's like I'm not going to say the one that my father was involved in, but it's like, there are, like, it's the biggest one that I know, but like. Fine. A company called Welsh Allen, right? It's like Welsh Allen. Basically, if you go into a hospital or a doctor's waiting room, you're going to see they make the blood pressure thing. They make every single product you will see on the wall, and they were a private company until my father came in, and then now it's a public company that sold a big chunk of it to the fucking Chinese. Same with the other company he worked for, which was an MRI or like a company, and then the Chinese bought that too, and so it's. We have so many fucking problems that we need to sort of solve, and this virus may be the great equalizer of fixing all these problems before we even start to have a conversation about what Medicare for all would even look like in this country. So it's like, and again, it's like, to your point, Dallas, like, I get where your head's at, but it is the failure of capitalism in so many different ways. I mean, we're seeing it in real time. But it's like, the problem was that I was screaming to the void because we can never even start to address these problems before there was some kind of crisis like this that made the average person pay attention to it. And it was the same thing I would say about public education. It's like, I think public college should be free, but you cannot have humanities departments anymore in them. And it's just, it's obvious. It's like, and also too, we like starting to value, like I said on another one, trade schools, being an electrician, being a plumber. Like, it's so interesting to me. Like, now also this virus has highlighted how sinister and disgusting CEOs are. But if a woman becomes one, wow, brave. So amazing that she reached these heights. Hot heights in her sexy heels.
Just, I think, like, female serial killers, they're interesting in their own way.
Because it's unusual, right? Exactly. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
They're harder to catch because they don't talk. Like, the reason why we don't have any information on female killers is that they don't talk about what they do. Like, they've done the same kind of, like, studies that they did with, like, Ed Kemper, like Mindhunter. I'm sure people have seen it, but like.
Yeah.
that same kind of thing where they go out to all prisons and they find the killers and they try to talk to them, and all the men like sing like canaries immediately because they're like so egocentric that they want to be famous. But the women are like, no, it's fine, I got the money. You know what I mean? Like it's so colder. Like they don't care about their image. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Oprah's the same. Oprah's the same. It's just about the money.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Carol Baskin.
Actually,
Carol
that's not true.
Baskin,
Oprah
yeah.
cares about people liking her. That's why she hasn't run for president, because she doesn't want to give up that celebrity. Which I get. Like, I would be in the same position.
Well, who the fuck wants to like? Do you need any more evidence right now of who the fuck wants to be president?
Yeah.
No,
dude,
I
this
mean,
is
yeah.
this
It seems
sucks.
like so much so that so much so that Joe Biden is now.
Yeah. Well, he's just. I mean, he does. There's no point even talking about him. He doesn't stand any kind of chance. So, like, Neononi, if we were to go to war with China, what do you think that would look like?
Well, the battlefield wouldn't be in mainland China. It would, that here's the thing. It kind of goes back to other things you were talking about. Because of China's, and goes back to Africa as well, because of China's dominance on all the rare earth, materials that we need, from everything from cell phones to pretty much everything used by the military, we're gonna, I think, before a hot war with China could happen, or at least on our part, intentionally, you would start seeing more, kind of proxy wars in Africa and in nations that have, those materials. Because without them, we're sitting ducks. We have a superior military right now. We have superior missile capabilities and all that, but we still rely on China for all those things. So I
can't see any distinction between the Cold War and this potential war, because I mean, any war post-nuclear age is gonna play out kind of the same. I mean, I assume, unless the countries don't have nuclear capabilities, and then it's more like Iraq or Afghanistan.
Right, and then we invade them in short order. But or like Libya with Hillary Clinton. Hillary decided to go in. Hill Dog. And then the second we got him to stop his nuclear program, we raped him with a bayonet and let him die in the streets. So that's what happens when you don't have nukes as negotiating power. So But again, I think that, like, it's what
you still can win, though. I mean, look at Vietnam.
Sure, I mean, well, guerrilla warfare, yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's kind of the thing.
Because
like,
it's hard, because if you're not Genghis Khan and you're not willing to just kill everyone, then it's kind of, then it's like a battle of personalities that you could have to, like, break into someone's house and then be like, but shouldn't I live here? Shouldn't I tell you what to do? It's like, no. Right. You're either going to rob the person or you're going to kill them, but, like, you can't win. It's hard to win a battle of personalities when you are invading.
Well, luckily we have a TV personality as our president, so we will win every battle of personality.
Dude, that's what I was saying on Wednesday. It's like, I think it's so fucking funny, and I know that, like, a few of you are going to disagree with me, but I'm curious to hear from Neononi and Marco of, like, the whole world is going to be looking to Donald John Trump to make a decision.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Which is, I kind of love it. Because it's so fits into the simulation. Like, it's so perfect. And, like, of course, like, I would, in a situation in which, like, because the president is essentially just supposed to be a character actor anyway, so to have that person have to be him, it's so ridiculous. Sorry, one more time?
No, I was going to say, ironically, though, it's funny because he is the personality, he is the celebrity, the actor, whatever, but at the same time, his response is more candid than we can expect from anybody else. Sure. In a way, we're almost getting a more genuine and authentic, take. And, I don't know. I kind of appreciate that in a weird way.
Oh, it's almost by accident. I mean, it's what I think I was saying on the last one of, like, again, if you learn how to speak his language, you know when he's telling the truth and when he's lying. It's really obvious.
Very readable.
Exactly. I almost do. You think it's? I know this is like probably giving him too much credit, but do you think it's almost by design?
I'd love to say yes, but I don't think so.
You don't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's playing 4D chess at all. I think it's just him. I think it's just who he is.
What was the clip we were watching earlier where he's like, "I'm number one on Facebook right now." Like number one.
So
can you believe
dumb,
that,
dude?
Number one on Facebook.
That's exactly who he is. It's like there's no like step he's making behind the curtain that's like, if I say this, they're gonna freak out, and then they'll report it on news, and then they'll stop paying attention to this other thing. It's like he's not doing that. He's just saying whatever the fuck comes to his mind, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Like he's a child. He has a child brain, but that makes him fun and like a great personality.
He's a chaos magician. He creates his own reality. In the process of lying.
Yeah.
Every time you see Trump on TV, he's just free balling. I hope you know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, because it's funny because when I've been watching all of these press conferences he's been giving, and they're hilarious because he's reading. So he's got the script in front of him like this. And he's like, today we have found out that we have 375 million active cases. That's a lot. That's a lot. He goes off his script. He's off script now. That's a lot, but it could be worse. It could be worse. It could be better. Could be worse. I don't know.
Could be better.
And then it just gets really dry again.
Balls on your head.
Yeah. It's like,
oh, that's right. Yeah, you can still see the dick and balls.
Oh
on the back.
Yeah, that was.
I just wanted
that was
to point
pretty
this
good.
out, Perry. Are you in the studio that they filmed the Joe Biden interview?
No.
You got the green screen behind you.
No, he is too good
Where
of
are the
lighting to be
bookshelves?
in that
You need
studio.
okay, for next time you have to get the bookshelves and like the. Whatever,
Okay, yeah,
like,
I'll get in my high ceilings as well. Yeah.
we have to know that we have to know that the twinks that listen to us actually read. This is very important. we need to have like at least physical proof that we have an educated audience. So
there's at least 2 books in this room at one point.
I like. You know what's so crazy is that like the setup you have right now, which is basically what we have for Sean as well.
That was exactly what I was kind of styling about.
Exactly.
I was like, I think that they just use like a sheet anyway. Like I should be fine.
That's exactly what it is. Like people don't really know it, but like cause I was talking to Nia and Oni about this. He was talking about building a set, which is something we'd love to do. But like literally, I can touch Sean. Like he's right there. So he's he's like less than about 2 feet away from me.
Yeah.
It's easy to tell like when you walk up and like go do something, you walk right off camera, and then immediately you're right in Sean's screen. So
we kind of had to make the best with the space that we have, but
it works.
But but what's so funny to me is that like even with like you just kind of setting that up now for probably the videos you're making on your own channel, and then also to do this with us, you still look better than Joe Biden.
Yeah, his setup is awful. And like I think they purposefully made it more awful to be like, well, we're just gonna make do after our excuse,
What was the last one he did? Was that when
Yeah,
he was
we're
touching his
bare
face?
bones.
Has he done any more of them since?
Yes, yeah, he's done a few, and every single time it's a mistake. It's been bad every single time.
The last one he's up.
Yep. Yeah. He. Look, I mean, like it's like I said, it's. I've been talking like friends of like, what do you think about Joe Biden? I'm like, who fucking cares? Like Trump is gonna strap on his golden roller skates, his pink socks, and just skate right back into re-election. It's like,
I kind of hope so, because to be honest, like I hate Trump and I don't like him at all. But at the same time, it's like I just don't like. I really fundamentally just find like deep down inside the idea of these fucking vapid assholes that are completely disingenuous running a man clearly with dementia and then getting rewarded for it just feels worse.
Well, and that's the thing about it is it's like it's one of those things of like I've never hated Trump. Like he never caused me to feel like hatred. It was more just like, yeah, this is about what we deserved. Like this is about what we deserved. And you've been with me pretty much since that started, so you know that I'm being honest when I say that.
Absolutely.
But the other part of it is like I hate the Democrats more, which is like a weird thing to be in, just because
I never did, and now I've gotten there.
I'm ramping up.
I didn't hate them more.
I just thought that they were a
Hillary
lame
Clinton
party.
era. But like, because I thought, okay, like at that moment, I was okay with the pragmatism of it because I was a little bit more naive politically. But at the same time, it's like I was accepting of it. It felt like, it was what it was. It wasn't the ideal situation, obviously, but I was able to accept it. But this time, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like Hillary Clinton, comparatively, seems like a more understandable choice because at least she can talk. Like, you know, she's Carol Baskin.
Well,
like,
no.
is, yeah.
But the thing is when you're in America,
I like Carol Baskin a little bit, just a little bit, because I like the fact that she's a complete sociopath. I can respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that more than somebody who's just like a complete fucking mess.
Right.
That should not be able to do anything. Should not be able to get any job. I wouldn't trust Joe Biden at McDonald's.
I think what's interesting though is that like, so Marco and Iannone will be able to chime in on this of like, because they were people who were kind of I'm not gonna speak for you. You can change it, but I'm pretty sure you guys were on the Trump thing. Like, I think you guys actually voted for him, which again, this you didn't.
I didn't vote for either him or Hillary. But
I voted for the
I did support him. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a big Bill Stein supporter.
Eventually.
Yeah. I wrote in Harambe, so like that's,
I wouldn't have blamed
that's
you.
an old joke. But
like I think that like when
it was period correct, so
sure when that election was going on though, it's like it was so I already knew pretty early on there were two things that like was starting to like really make me not like the left, which was identity politics number one, which like is just and then when you know a little bit about her, which I and also the Clinton dynasty, and I'm a huge Christopher Hitchens fan, and he was trashing the Clintons before it was even cool. And so like I was a big student of his, and you're like, why does he hate these people so much? And you start to look into it and you're like, oh, they're both fucking monsters. And then and again, it's like, okay, so like I still voted for her. It was hard. I held my nose and did it. Just to be honest, I know you get to laugh at me. It's true. I did it. You know. But Marco, I have to say, I'm glad that I did, because whenever I get into these kinds of discussions with like stupid fucking elite LA liberals, I get to have that defense of like, look, I voted for your stupid cunt that you wanted. And so what do you want from me other than like, am I not being honest with you right now that these people are failing us? Like, isn't it obvious? And so it gives me kind of like this shield a little bit. And so in hindsight, I'm glad that I did it. But voted for Bernie in the primary. And
yeah.
So, but that didn't go anywhere.
Well, he won the primary, just like he did this time.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I do find your electoral system to be so like inherently distrustful. Like I don't understand how, like, I get like you guys don't have control over it, obviously, but I do find the fact that you don't have paper ballots, now that I'm more intimately aware, like I've worked as a poll clerk, the fact that you don't have paper ballots seems very egregious to me. Like to the point where I'm like, how could you ever trust anything if like no one knows who won other than the people who are declaring it?
Like trust it even when we did have them. Remember the hanging chads of 2000?
Oh
yeah,
God,
of, like
Texas
Al Gore and Bush.
Yeah.
Texas used to have hilarious Texas gubernatorial races. They would stuff the ballot box, like you would have 400% counties come out. Like look at Lyndon Baines Johnson when LBJ won the gubernatorialship of I have to go back. I'm forgetting my Texas history now. But anyway, it was something like it came down to one box, and one box was so fucking stuffed with votes for LBJ that's what got him his spot in.
That's great.
That was his shoe in the door.
We're gonna keep those Nintendos voting Democrat for the next 60 years.
Who said that? Oh, that was LBJ?
Yeah.
Fuck, dude.
Wow.
Dude, LBJ, you talk about 4D, like a 4D politician. LBJ, fucking, that was him, man. Like,
yeah, no doubt, and he could pull it off by pretending to be some fucking dumb hayseed, which is he did so well, but he was not. He was a very, very clever politician, and probably killed Kennedy. So.
Yes.
The best thing ever, man. Just the best politician's answer when they asked him straight up, "Do you even believe in civil rights?" And he's just like, it's something that's got to be done. No, yes, no, just like we got to do it.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing them bitch about it. So let's just do something.
Yeah. I want everybody to stop talking about Jack for fucking 5 seconds, because it's all anybody talked about during like the first half of his presidency.
Of course. Well, because I think it was like the first president we'd had in the first president in televised history, I think, right? Well, no, in color television. Well, no,
on par with like fucking Washington in terms of.
And he was like, moderately attractive and well spoken, and it's like we just had like dogs up until that point, and so I think that like, and plus Jackie O at that time before Melania, who's easily our sexiest first lady ever with her weird little Slovenian baby voice, but
you people, okay, I'm obviously gay. I don't understand. Like, I don't think she's drastic.
I don't see the appeal either.
She's hot.
Perpetually looks like someone photoshopped the picture.
I don't think she's hot. I don't.
Dude, she's like,
yeah, I think
she's not a young
butterface.
Intense.
Really? So I think she's objectively attractive for her, and especially because she has like my kind of cockroach people DNA, like where a lot of women turn into mess. Like they're kind of like Japanese women where they're like young and all of a sudden they're like 1,000 years old. And it's like, and so Slovenian women kind of have a similar.
Their eyes become more and more slanted. Like they get it.
Hey, well, I mean that's kind of the thing about Melania. I don't know, like whatever work she's had done, but now Melania looks like she looks like an Inuit in the face, but she's still hot and has big juicy
someone's Photoshop picture. So like,
I know you weren't just about to say naturals.
She's big juicy manufactured naturals that have a lot of silicone injected.
Those are not big naturals.
Big old greasy tits. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like I remember when
diner lady
when people were going after Trump for like the Epstein being on the Epstein plane. It's like, look at all the women he dates. They're all like big, fake bolt-on titted whores that are
all American,
30-year-old whores, or like what?
Yeah.
Marla Maples was maybe the one that was under 30 that he went after. I don't know how old she was when they hooked up, but she was a fucking snack when he got with her. But
the thing about Melania that gets me,
or not Ivanka, what the fuck her name? His first wife.
Ivana,
yeah, whatever. The names are so similar that it's like.
Yeah, I know.
That was intentional because he's fucking his daughter.
He wants to, maybe. I don't know.
Holy fucking base.
He definitely does. There's no question of maybe. He definitely does. The question is, has he? That's the question.
So here's the question. I'm gonna ask Marco this question. If he were to actually fuck Ivanka, would everyone call it base? That's like in his like in the Green Frog crew, would they be like, "Oh, dude, that's so base that he fucked Ivanka"?
Absolutely.
They would be with it. I mean, I would imagine they would be for it. I don't see any. That's
awful.
They would manage to rationalize that.
That's so gross.
I mean, he would officially
they would be continuing the
Daddy
bloodline.
Trump.
So
what's that, Marco?
He would officially be Daddy Trump at that point.
Like, that would officially elevate him into God Emperor status. It would be very Greek, wouldn't it? Like very Greek or Roman, like sort of story.
It would be ironic the fact that like now you've elected someone that is very similar to the person that you guys rebelled against. Like at that point, he is sort of Mad King George. So like if he was the last president, the idea that somebody who's fucking his daughter becomes like, you know, the Mad King George eventually, like the neo Mad King George or the new Mad
Holy
King George
shit
would make sense as an ending to it.
I'd like to think that he's more Lope de Aguirre, like
I don't know that one.
Aguirre,
you can
the
compare
Wrath
him
of
to a
God.
lot of people. I've heard Nero passed around a lot with like the Holy Roman Empire.
Robert De Niro.
Yep. And the Irishman with
he
his
is sort of like
lips.
an unemployed actor as a president, like a character actor.
So I'm going to switch gears really quickly. So I'm going to ask Niani this question. Marco, obviously you're kind of a little bit more in tune with this one too.
I don't know. I feel like you can't give.
Oh no. I think maybe Greg was like delayed or something.
Oh, okay. So I want to ask the future of gun laws in this country. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, again, it all kind of hinges on. You were talking about it last week about all the people kind of having their, reconsidering the laws that they supported and called for years, and realizing now that they kind of fuck you when you need when you need them the most. Do they take it? Do they take that with them after this whole thing kind of dies down? If it dies down, and there's not less of a panic. I'm hoping. But I really don't know. The thing is, here's something that I don't really know if people are talking about. But before you mentioned, suicides are going to increase.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if we're going to see some, fathers who can no longer afford to support their family taking out their wife and kids because they And if that's going to be kind of exploited and turned into like, see, this is why we can't, this is why we can't.
I could see them doing that because again, like, they always need a easy explanation to explain away tragedy, and the reality that you and I know as gun owners is you could just poison your kid. I mean, it doesn't the means through which we do it, but they'll focus on that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need an AR-15 to kill, 7-year-old child and your wife.
No.
But but I really don't know, because I mean, that's the thing, is I don't want to make any bold predictions, because this is such, like, just such uncertainty living above us. But
it's unprecedented, yeah.
But
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I can tell you though, like I've told you off of here, I have people who were never gun people or never really into them who, are coming to me saying, hey, can I buy something from you legally, of course. And, and I have people asking me like, where can I get this, or how do I go about getting this? Because they never in their whole life considered it.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily anti-gun, but they, they were kind of indifferent. And now they're like, yeah, the reality's sinking in. And, not even in like a us versus them Civil War scenario, but just defending your home, defending your property, defending yourself if you need to go out, if there are, because there's going to be elevated crime rates. It's going to be
absolutely.
Yeah, pre-95, it's gonna be really bad really soon.
As the Canadian conversation, and if I can, my perception of your gun culture or gun policy or how your government would respond to that is absolutely fucking nothing. I don't see your government doing anything. I mean, they're certainly gonna. I'm not saying that they won't like enforce a police state, but the last thing they need is trying to get your guns back. Like that horse is out the barn. Like it's too difficult to actually organize, especially in a time of crisis. I'm not saying your government would be more likely to just kill innocent citizens than attempt to try to put forward a program that takes back your guns.
Or they do both.
That's more likely.
Yeah, they've done it before, where they've done both.
True.
Like take back assault rifles, but that was in times of like relative normalcy, right? I mean, we're talking about the assault rifle ban, like
which
in New York.
But it wasn't. No way was
that was federal.
It's federal, but it didn't yield any kind of productive results at all. I mean, when you look back on it in hindsight.
Because it's hard if the culture's not with you. It's just like it's not going to work. Like you have to have some amount of mutual understanding. Like in Australia, that worked because people were done with. I mean, not everybody, obviously. I'm sure there were.
But there's also only 30 million people in Australia with a continent that's gigantic. So
right, but I mean that means that there's less police to then round up those guns. I mean, you could make the argument.
And Marco just made a good point of those guns were all registered. So like we have in many states you don't even require you to actually register them, which is interesting to Nia Oni's point. Had a friend reach out. She listens to this podcast regularly, and she was asking me if she could buy something from me, and I'm like, look, like we'd have to find a gun broker to do it legally, and my fear would be that if someone stole it, then it's still under my name, and then if someone commits a crime with it, then I'm liable for what ends up happening.
Maybe you should be careful gendering our listener, because we have a population of maybe 2% female listening to our podcast.
Are you sure it's female?
Yeah, good point. Who knows in this era?
Can I just add one thing though?
Yeah.
The thing about the government not doing it is, because especially in times like this, just this month, I think Democrats introduced and it passed a committee, basically a bill that was even more sweeping. It's similar to the one that was proposed in Virginia that inspired the big rally a few months ago.
Oh.
Even during this whole thing, there was a huge. It's not going to go anywhere because we have a Republican president and controlling the Senate. But even this month, as that stuff's going on, there was a bill introduced to ban assault rifles, ban large capacity ammunition magazines, universal registration.
Okay, but then enforcing that, do you actually expect during a time where there's a plague going around that they're going to be?
No,
even if theoretically they did.
Yeah, well, no, it's long term, but I think that if any source, I mean, we have a Republican president, we have a Republican Senate, and we have a largely Republican Supreme Court as well now.
This is why I'm thinking
to protect these things, but at the same time, it's it's amazing. I think that mostly kind of maybe what Nia Noni's hitting on, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is this idea that they just can't help themselves even when it isn't opportune to be having this discussion. They need to have these positions like, like also like them talking about like abortion stuff. Like, none of it really like matters right now, but they think that it's what their constituents want to hear right now, and it's just not tone deaf. Totally.
Well, the other thing too, though, is like it really doesn't matter whether you have a Republican in office and a Republican Senate and stuff. They'll just subcontract it out to Blackwater. I mean, George W. Bush was president when they were, after Katrina, doing house-to-house gun roundups and confiscations in New Orleans.
Right. That's a good point.
So to the point, it's like it doesn't matter. And what's happening right now is just a speed bump. Like once this shit gets ironed out or gets ironed out to, where it's palatable levels to the average shit dick, shit rag American, it just fucking continues right on, man. Like they don't miss they don't miss anything. It's just like straight up. All right. Like I think they sold 2.4 million guns last month. So somewhere the Brady campaign is like fucking crying. And
I have your chart, the chart you sent over, Chad. I have it up right now. And, so what it's looks like it's highlighting is that 2 million guns were sold in the January after Obama's reelection and the Sandy Hook shooting, and then nearly 2 million have been sold during the coronavirus outbreak in March 2020. Oops, sorry.
Again, but it doesn't matter. Like once this shit gets ironed out, the whole corona panic and all that, everything continues
like normal.
Just a smooth cut. We're going after the guns and blah, blah, blah. And Beto's going to have a fucking tent in his pants.
But do you think that like the average American citizen is going to be amenable to that message anymore?
Well, certainly not outside of the cities. That's what I'm like. Okay. I think it's more likely that Planned Parenthood gets shuttered. Like we were talking about abortion rights. I think that's much more likely to get completely shuttered. I mean, look at we're talking about the one party that sees this as an issue that they want to grasp upon, as we're talking about, like even in times when it doesn't make sense. That party has no power and does not, like, just from a predictive element, doesn't seem like they're going to get power anytime soon.
Oh,
and the
don't
Republican Party, I can see them enforcing more of a police state, but I don't see that as gun policy being the thing that they go to. It's more so getting a militarized police force.
Dallas, don't underestimate the ability that new Republicans want to fucking take away your gun laws.
But do they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah,
Look at Dan Crenshaw and his ilk.
Dan Crenshaw, I have to say about that.
What a fucking sellout that guy is. Unbelievable.
What a fucking cuck.
Yeah, dude, totally.
What's he saying? I'm not aware of like his
I'm
deal.
surprised. I would have assumed he just had the standard Second Amendment program.
Oh no, he's all behind the red what is it, the
red flag law.
The red flag laws. He was supporting red flag laws. Yeah, and then also too, like he's also just such a neocon in terms of foreign policy. What a disappointment as a young
He has just the worst takes on absolutely everything.
Boy,
there was a brief moment where we thought he was really hot, and now he's repulsive.
Yeah. No, he was. Yeah, that was the first of like, oh, finally we get a sexy Republican. Because they kept trying to push Paul Ryan like he was sexy, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here. No.
Ugh.
But
absolutely not.
But one eye Dan, I was all about it. But yeah, he consistently is just shit take after shit take. And the red flag laws, when you really read into what they would actually entail if they were to enforce it, was fucking scary. And so, like again, because like it's similar to what we've been talking about in terms of like how countries have contained the virus in terms of literally infiltrating all of the rights that you have. That's so much what the red flag laws were too. Of like, oh, well, the government now gets to look at your social media accounts to decide whether or not like you make a joke about a school shooting or something. Well, he's certainly serious about it, so we need to raid him for all that he has. Well, also violating HIPAA laws in terms of like your mental health, like. Yeah. Like there's so many problems about that. Like I don't need the government to know which medications I take for mental health. Like get the fuck out of here. So it's those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
We don't see a Republican Party whose base cares about a very small amount of things, which is basically the only thing they care about is gun laws and restriction of abortion. I mean, those are the two issues the Republican Party is almost based around in a large sense. And, of course, laissez-faire.
Jesus.
Yeah, laissez-faire capitalism. I think a lot of the only political issue they have is pro-life.
I think a lot of that perception, though, is just sort of like how the media portrays what conservatism actually is. Like, generally speaking, when you're speaking to like somebody who's a more intelligent conservative, it is truly.
I'm not talking about the voters, though. I'm talking about the politicians and how they perceive their voters. And the reason why they're generally put there, they usually campaign on those kinds of issues. So I just don't see it happening.
They campaign on those issues because there's no like there are issues that literally have they're philosophical gray area issues, so they don't ever have to stop talking about them. That's the thing, is like these are never issues that are ever going to be solved in the way that anybody wants to have them solved, and that is by design. Like that's why they choose these issues, because they can just honestly, like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party,
why would they intentionally try to put themselves in the driver's seat in enacting like some kind of nationwide gun removal? It just I just don't understand. Like politically, it would be suicide. I'm not,
It would be, but
I think Trump bringing those same stuff, people were relatively malleable to it. It seemed like.
Yeah,
there were certain people on the right obviously jumped on it.
I could see the Democrats doing that to their base, because the Democrats fuck their base on a regular basis, and so do the Republicans. But usually, it's in a way that they're not even paying attention to.
They do. But like, if you're an intelligent Republican voter, they fuck you in the same ways. And Neononi wanted to pop in, so let him do that real quick.
Yeah, as far as Republicans and gun control, machine guns were heavily registered since the 1930s, but they were officially banned in 1986 because Ronald Reagan signing that into law.
Yep.
George H.W. Bush was responsible for the import laws, which basically, killed a lot of different types of rifles coming into the United States. I hate to say it, but under Trump, there's been more federal gun control passed than there was under 8 years of Obama with the bump stock ban,
which was a lot. Pressure because it was a lot of pressure because of Las Vegas, and what's tough is that like I'm not like really excusing it from him necessarily, but in the sense of like because we've never really seen anything quite like that. It was so yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think in some ways, I think it might have been a boon to the Second Amendment advocates, because you can no longer say, well, with this little cheap piece of plastic, you can convert your rifle into a machine gun. So it kind of took that argument away from the anti-gun people.
Right.
So the bump stock ban, it wasn't something that bothered me tremendously. I'm just saying this. People don't realize this, but bump stocks were given the okay by the ATF under Obama. They were, the
Interesting.
ATF.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, what happened is that if you want to sell a part like that, you have to go to the ATF, give them a sample, and they have the authority without any kind of congressional legislation to decide if or not they violate the National Firearms Act. And the ATF said, no, this is fine. It's completely good. It doesn't violate the machine gun ban. So that was under Obama.
So I think what we're discovering is that if you want something done in American politics, vote for the person that's saying the opposite of what you want. And then you'll get it.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Democrats are in reality actually the conservatives, and the Republicans, I guess, are the liberals. I don't know. It's just sort of like I was listening to that Rolling Stone podcast, and Adam McKay, who I don't love universally or anything like that, but he said something like that America has a Coke versus Pepsi political system.
Pretty much, yeah.
That pretty much sums it up, where it's like they're essentially the same thing.
Right.
They're just pretending to be different. Democrats are the choice for the new generation. And they have, and they have famous pedophiles.
And AOC is Crystal Pepsi.
Oh.
And Coke is 50s nostalgia. So the Coke is the Republicans. It actually fits perfectly.
It was I listened to that interview too. It was pretty good.
I kind of like him, even though he's a Warren person, which I'm like, even by the end of it, I'm like,
he seemed apologetic about even like he was just sort of. It seemed like he was kind of.
He was heartbroken by the fact that she did what she did, but then he still felt like I have to like
say it. Yeah.
He felt deep inside like wanted to like her, but at the same time he couldn't defend her. Which I mean, who could at this point? Like especially now, even after the lie thing, it's just gotten worse Because
I don't know. I've seen some check marks on Twitter still recently. So
It's
I mean, those
unbelievable.
people will be doing it forever.
They have.
you're
They
talking
have.
about actual rational people here. So.
Their career
Yeah.
check marks.
Yeah, they have worms in their brains.
I think
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren is basically the equivalent to Mitt Romney.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
as soon as the election was over, everybody just distanced themselves and
Yeah.
forgot about it. And
You mean
Yeah.
the person that thoughts, like occasionally says something that's completely against their own party, but then just eventually sell out?
Yeah.
Oh, he was the governor of
Yeah.
Massachusetts. Yeah, I mean, he was.
Yeah,
liberal in so many ways.
isn't that funny? Like, so
the same
she
kind of shit.
she came third in Massachusetts in her own state.
Oops.
Yeah.
No,
It
that's
was
funny. I was
hysterical.
listening to somebody, I can't remember where, and I wanted to like try to find this clip, but it was someone who lived in Massachusetts, and they were saying like that it was long before any of like anything this was fleshed out. It was before the primaries had even really started, and they were just, I can't even remember who it was, but they were just being asked like, what do you think about like each of the candidates? And and he was from Massachusetts, and he was like, well, I just never trust anybody from Massachusetts to ever run a presidential campaign. I'm like, I didn't know, like at the time, none of this shit had happened. But then retrospectively, I'm just thinking about like, man, that guy was right. Apparently there's something about that state where it's just like, they're just complete fucking boondoggles. Like they just can't get it together. They have terrible instincts. I mean, like
when St. Patrick drove out all the snakes from Ireland, they went to Massachusetts. They went to Boston.
And they formed one giant snake named Elizabeth Warren. They all came together and congealed into one human, and that human was Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah. No, she's the worst. I do think that she is fundamentally the most like I don't know, hateable person of that group. I guess.
Well, I mean,
other than Pete, I don't even really think
I
about
don't
people anymore.
Pete, yeah, like I don't know.
I haven't
like,
thought about him since he dropped out.
Did you see his beard?
You didn't see him do Jimmy Kimmel or whatever? Oh,
dude,
God, kill me now.
Speaking of that, have you guys been watching these late night shows without audiences?
No.
So
not really.
so I watched John Oliver did one, and I watched it, and it was so bizarre because he would like play Trump clips, and then give his reaction to it, and I'm like, are you? I couldn't tell if he was goofing on them anymore. It was like, it was so weird. It was like, are you goofing on this clip, or are you? What's really going on here? I'm not really sure. And so it really goes to show that like the kind of the audience that does what it's supposed to do, so dictates how you're supposed to react to like what they're actually playing. Whoever has, if you don't mind, can you turn your audio down on the stream because it comes through, it echoes through.
Is Trevor Noah doing it without an audience?
Yes, he is too. Yeah, it's fucking weird.
I have to watch that.
We talked to Biden recently. I saw that. I didn't watch it, but I saw that he did that.
What it really
I don't like listening to Biden. It makes me sad.
Yeah, it's not funny,
just,
really.
Like, I just don't want to. I hate it. It just makes me uncomfortable.
I just think of my grandpa, and it just kind of makes me.
I love watching Biden's fucking thoughts just peter out on his tongue, and he's just
kicking him.
I will watch a compilation.
Remove.
Yeah,
I
can
don't
do
want to watch
that
it in real time. It's too.
I just want to watch the
too
highlights.
much.
Right. Yeah.
I will watch it.
Trevor knows that brand of smug too. That like it just he. I mean, it was just what a. I think like even conservatives could agree that like Jon Stewart had his moments.
Oh yeah.
And so but my God, like what a fickle, terrible replacement.
Anytime he's ever been in a movie or made a movie, it's always sucked.
What has he made?
Like he made that thing where it was about like a guy. I can't even fucking remember.
I know he was in The Faculty. I remember that. He was the first teacher that got it in The Faculty.
By Smoochie with Edward Norton. He's also someone who sucks. I hate it. Can't stand him.
Would not tell the aristocrats joke in the Paul Provenza documentary. He would not. Jon Stewart would not even entertain giving the aristocrats joke.
Right.
Why was that even brought up? Like he made that thing where it was about like a guy. Oh,
what's that?
Someone cut off.
No, there's I think we have people that are like fucking with us or something, which is of course. Okay. I'm actually surprised it's the first time it's happened.
I know, it's weird. It's very weird.
But okay, so how many people do you think are going to be unemployed after all of this?
I don't know. Well, like, I guess 30% of the country.
30% is kind of what the.
Isn't that a conservative estimate? 30%.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, yeah, that's the conservative estimate. That's like Trump saying, or the administration saying that there's only going to be 200,000 people that are going to die from this, and I'm like, Are we sure about that? It
Right.
seems like a low number.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems like that's not really going to be the case. Because I mean, if 50% of it, if it can spread fast enough, if 50% of the people get it, then, and if they don't, if they're not, it's a fluctuation. So it'll be somewhere in between 3% and 20 of the population that will die, because 3% is the lowest number possible, because that's with medical care.
That's crazy.
We don't really necessarily know that is accurate, but because I've been hearing numbers where, like, if you're on a ventilator, you only have a 1 in 10 shot.
Jesus, I didn't
is
know
not
that.
good.
No.
If it gets that bad to that point.
In Italy, it's 1 in 10. If you're on a ventilator, you have a 1 in 10 shot. That's what I've been told. So then it's sort of a fluctuation where 20% or so is probably the worst amount, like percent of the population, because 50% is going to get it. But if they all get it at once, we're fucked.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, that's why they're petering it out, because the slower they can make the process, and if they can keep up with it, then it'll lower the amount of people that'll die, presumably. But I mean, I don't know. We don't really know. It's all changing by the day in
Dr.
terms
Drew,
of what's going to happen.
So Dr. Drew has been saying, like, the reason the CDC has been saying what they've been saying is not to stop the spread of it. The spread is going to happen regardless. We can slow it, of course, but slowing it is what the CDC wants to do so that we don't overwhelm our healthcare system, in the U.S. at least. So, like, if hospitals are overwhelmed, many, many people will die. But if they are consistently, you know, I guess to use the word whelmed in a way that they're used to, then they won't. Then people won't die as often. You know, like we'll have more people.
Yeah, that's the whole flattening the curve idea.
Exactly. That's flattening the curve. It's not that we can stop it in its tracks. It's that we can slow it so that we are not overwhelmed by its impact.
Right.
And I don't know about you guys, but I have almost no faith in that not happening. I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like it's gonna, like, it at least will happen for periods of time where the healthcare system will be completely overwhelmed and people will just
it's gonna
I do think that there will be periods where people are just going to be dying in their own homes that won't be able to
I
get
think the next 2 months
treatment.
I think the next 2 months are going to be where it like gets really spicy. But you know, this does go to prove two things. Number one, the obvious, which is China was totally doing a fuck job on the numbers. And number two, that when push comes to shove, no fucking federal government can find their fucking ass with both hands. Not here in the States, not in Europe, nowhere.
Well, I would defend my socialist comrades and say that socialist countries are better at this than the capitalist ones.
Well, I mean, even some of the most socialized areas, like Sweden, and they're just doing the herd immunity thing, and it's not going well for them. So.
Well, I mean, they're better off. I mean, in terms of the reactions, I'm more in terms of the improvement. I mean, the economic the economic reactions from those countries are better and more understanding. Like in terms of their willingness to just be like, okay, we need to do this now, and not like, oh, we're going to do a bill and then it's going to like not nearly cover what we need to cover, and then we're going to do one. We realize like
intrinsic
a week
to the
later
US.
that we completely fucked up, and then we need to do another bill. I'm just saying, like, you know, the fact that Cuba's sending doctors to other countries does kind of, to me, imply that, you know, maybe they needed more credit than they deserved in terms of being competent in this regard. It's the one thing they put effort into. So, you know,
you don't think that's somewhat a PR move?
Say what?
You don't think that's a PR move somewhat, sending doctors to Italy?
Well, of course it's a PR move, but the fact that they're able to do it, and the fact that they have such a, like, in terms of their population, they have a surplus of medical supplies or medical, you know, expertise, does show that there is some benefit, at least if you're experiencing a plague, that there is benefit in investing in those areas of society, which is what all of the capitalist countries haven't done. And I include my own country in that. Like, the fact that we haven't invested in those areas are why we're going to look, you know, why it's going to be so bad. Because because we have put money in other things, because we assume that, you know, that this wouldn't happen, I suppose, or it's just one of those things that you don't think of, I suppose. But yeah, anyway.
I look at it the other way, where they are sending the doctors there to actually learn how to work on shit. Because like in Venezuela, the medical schools there were just terrible. Like,
right, but Venezuela was resource poor. Like, that's not a comparison that you can make. That's not like a legitimate Like I know everybody brings up Venezuela as this is the distinction that all socialist countries should be based on, but there are plenty of capitalist countries that have much more freer markets that fall into the same traps that Venezuela did. It's just one of those things where if you bet big and your entire economy is based on the fact that you have oil, then you're going to fall into a trap of when the price drops, your entire economy just kind of collapses.
No, you actually just highlighted the biggest problem, which is having an entire economy based on one resource. So like that, I mean,
but that's what I'm talking about. But that's not a socialist principle. That's just a reality that a lot of poorer countries, but I mean, Venezuela, they decided, the government that was, hold at the time decided to actually invest it into the economy, but like, it's not wise in this kind of circumstance to overestimate your wealth when it's all based in one aspect.
Sure,
but they did, and it fucking crumbled.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that doesn't say anything to communism any more than all the countries that have done the same thing, that have capitalist economies or corrupt economies.
It does though. So like most of the countries most of the countries that people end up comparing, like kind of a socialist, it's always like a socialist hybrid system. Like even China is a communist system, but they're also like,
but that's what socialism is.
Hang on one second.
As long as you have private property, there is always going to be a hybrid aspect to it. I mean, I don't.
But that's the thing though. That isn't Venezuela though. So like
sure. Well, Go
so
ahead,
so it's not really good. The thing, my point is that Venezuela is not a good example for either side to use. Because I
just think it's one of those like red herring things that they're going to ignore the fact that large parts of Europe have huge social safety nets and are actually way more well distributed in terms of wealth than the States is, and they still have billionaires, and yet they can afford to give people vacations and treat their workers well, and they still have ridiculously rich people. They just have more of them instead of less of them, because billionaires have less money, but there are more billionaires because their wealth is more evenly distributed.
I don't think most people here, even people that have like, kind of, not fuck you money, but like, a sizable amount of wealth, would say that, the normal that we were operating at before this happened was spectacular by any means. I mean, I think that like people are like really waking up to that fact. It's like, but how, like, how do you want to shift your economy to rectify this problem? And like, and I think that instinctively, and I think that every person should, whether or not you're American or not, should have a bit of reticence about giving your government a shitload of power. And because again, it's like, if it takes one dictator to make that a problem. So
sure, but I think if you have if you have basically an economy that's not instigated by foreign influence, and if you have a long period of able to be a stable democracy that properly institutes social policies, like the Nords, like Sweden, like Denmark, that it shows that those programs better distribute the wealth over, and they still have wealth, they still have competition, they're still a capitalist economy, but at the same time they take care of their workers. And I just think that like the fact that that they're able to do that undeniably shows that yes, it takes a very long time to have that work. Because the problem with like Venezuela or these like banana republics is that if you pop up immediately and you have all this foreign influence and you have sort of a fly-by-night, sort of a non-stable government and a non-stable economy, then yes, it can fucking go to shit very easily. But these countries have been very unaffected by world events for long periods of times. So they've been able to just sort of sit off into a corner and just become more and more stable and be able to institute these kind of social policies, and they're not seemingly very corrupt. I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, but I do think that it points to the idea that the idea that we can't provide for the workers and still have wealth is a lie, and has always been a lie, and something that is just something that's instigated by the absurdly wealthy to constantly push on the poor so that they increase the amount of productivity, even though studies have shown that doesn't even really help productivity, that if you treat people better, it can actually improve productivity. It depends on how you do it, but I mean, anyway, I'm just saying, like,
yeah, there's been a lot of evidence of that.
Those countries as examples.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit tough, because I mean, if you look at Sweden's tax rate, for example, like someone like Sean and I would be directly impacted by how much we have to pay in taxes, and in terms of for services that we'll potentially never end up using. Like,
yeah, but that's the same here. But that's what socialism is. It's a collective.
Right. I don't love it.
Not
so that's
everyone.
That's
the
problem.
thing. You have to give up a little bit of freedom to be able to help your fellow man.
Fuck that.
I'm also like, honestly, I'm kind of like, fuck that too, because there's so many fucking people in this country that have children that shouldn't have no fucking business doing it in the first place. I'm not gonna fucking pay for their little shit. No. So like there has and again, like I'm willing to fucking pay these.
Yeah,
kinds
but
of
those
tax-
children are gonna grow up to work factory and be able to work factory jobs and
maybe
will be productive.
Maybe.
I guarantee you they won't. Once the machines start coming in, those kids are fucked just as fucked as
Sure, I mean, but that's another aspect. That's a problem with automation that everyone's facing.
Well, and that could ultimately be getting us to maybe this scenario that you're talking about, which is that like companies that choose to pick automation over actual workers are going to be the ones who have to pay some sort of exorbitant tax per automation item they choose to use. And I'm fine with that. Yeah,
like they would be paying a payroll. Like
sure.
they have to pay the same taxes that someone would pay in terms of a payroll. Otherwise, the economy is never going to equalize, or it's going to, you're always going to have an absurd amount of wealth on the top if you allow that to be the case. Because,
right.
I mean, automation is not really a problem. It's kind of a weird thing. Because if you think about it, like, our system is based on, like, okay, I get a job so that then I make muffins or whatever, or, use any example that I'm going to make this thing and I'm going to get paid for a service. But if we had the ability to just not have to pay anyone to do that, then at that point it does kind of destroy the capitalist system in a sense. But at the same time, it's not really a problem because you can still make muffins. You know what I mean? You just have to be able to give them to people in a different way other than I work at a different job that then allows me to buy them. If you understand what I'm saying.
You guys removed me up the last chat. Why are you guys whining so bad?
Literally remove.
I'm just gonna mute his audio and then let him scream into the void.
Okay. Good idea.
Yeah.
No, that's not fair.
You can't. Yeah, you can't remove. He's just gonna unmute his own audio.
Oh, then I'll just get rid of him again.
Man, that was the.
Why do you keep removing me? That's
remove.
Do you have anything interesting? Do you have anything?
Move.
Do you have anything interesting to say?
He can't be reasoned with.
No, he's too chaotic.
No, I know who this is.
You do?
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't be reasoned with? You didn't even give me a chance.
All right, well, say something interesting then. You got a few moments to try.
Who is this man?
Define a few moments.
The floor is yours.
I'm not even whining though.
The floor is yours.
So the floor is mine. All right. So here's where I'm at, bro. Are you guys ready for this?
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let it fly.
Okay. Here's what I think. The coronavirus is gonna get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
Everybody just needs to stay hydrated. Everybody needs to just spend time with their family, enjoy their loved ones. Okay, and just. Dang, you're really ready to remove me. I'm looking at the thing right here. You're really ready to remove me.
Hey, you have a captive audience, so keep it going, my friend.
Hey, there's 5 people watching right now, man. So, I mean, we got it going, bro. By, next month, we'll have, 5,000 people watching.
Hey, perfect.
Hydration is actually kind of a capitalist connect.
It's a capitalist connect.
That's mostly marketing.
We
don't actually need to worry about hydration.
You really gonna sit there and say we don't need to worry about hydration? If there's no water, there's no life.
You don't at all.
We're 90% water.
Because your body innately knows when it needs to drink water. That's something that we use.
Earth is 76% water, my friend.
Salt water though, which is a serious problem.
Sensitive, internal compass that determines whether or not we need to drink. It's called thirst. If you feel thirsty, then you should drink. But you don't have to worry about it. You'll know.
Homeostasis.
You'll know. Your body will know. It's true.
But you have to stay hydrated. Because if you're not hydrated, you're dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not
there have been people that have died because athletes have died from overhydration.
You're dehydrated.
Because they assume that they need to keep drinking water when in reality they're totally fine, and then they die as a result of it.
I don't know anything about that, my friend.
That was enough of that for real.
That was great.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like, if you want to be taken seriously on here, we're just talking. But like, if you want to be taken seriously, don't join and show your nipple.
You know who
on
that
the
was,
camera.
though?
I think the best policy is to start yelling and then
people
continue
really listen when you yell so
When
hard
you
that your
go
microphone's
fucking
clipping.
irate.
Yeah, just be prepared. They'll probably join again.
I'm ready for it. We're probably pretty close to wrapping this up. We're at an hour 40. So predictions for the future, guys. What do you think? What are we gonna look at like a week from now? What's gonna happen?
I'm hoping that the mall I work at closes.
I don't know why it's still open.
Wow, there's a mall
should have
that's
closed
still
years
open.
ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, the thing with Canada is that we're not as litigious. So there's lots of businesses that are still open because there's no government oversight. And in the States, people close right away because they're worried about getting sued. But that doesn't really happen as much here. It's harder to sue people and actually get money that way. Like they've deliberately made it so that it's difficult for an individual to do like a class action lawsuit for that kind of stuff, which is a problem with Canada. But yeah, so as a result, there's all these businesses that are still open. Because no one's selling them.
That sounds like it's kind of a death trap, to be honest.
Yeah, no one ever said that Canada was perfect. It's really not.
Is there only one store open in that mall still?
Well, there are stores outside of the mall that aren't directly connected to it that are going to permanently be open because they're like the only grocery store and the only they're a pharmacy and a grocery store, so they'll stay open. But then on the internal side of the mall, which is the only part that I really deal with, the only thing open is basically what I always thought of as like a money laundering business that's like constantly empty. But what I think they're going to try to do is maybe try to get their payroll covered by the government, because we have programs where you can cover 70% of your payroll if you have employees on. So I think that's what they're trying to do. I don't know. I don't fucking know the motivations. I don't understand. I'm assuming it has something to do with the French Canadian mob. That's my assumption because it's from Quebec and everything. The sketchiest part of Canada is the French part in general.
That's right. I hear that pretty consistently.
It's also the sexiest part, though. Sorry. If you go to French Canada, it's like
cheap booze. It's got great cheap booze. The rental market's really good in Montreal. It's a great place to live. The one part of it that I don't really like is all the French people, but other than that, it's great. No, I mean, I kid.
Tom says in the comments that was the Zuma bomber. The FBI was getting his ass. the Zoom bomber came in.
Yeah, they will be getting his ass.
Oh, I think you said the Zuma bomber, like the workout class.
Zumba bomber.
The Unabomber is, I think, what you were playing off of, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to play off of. I think that's what Tom was going for too. I didn't want to ruin his joke.
Oh yeah, the Unabomber, yeah.
Perry, what's your prediction by a week from today?
A week from today, I think that the cases are going to go up. I think I saw an article that Trump was, I don't know if this was like an Onion article or not, but Trump was saying that he was thinking it was unfair that people were uninsured and was thinking about expanding Medicare and Medicaid.
That's real.
And that he would be. Yeah, you saw it as well. So I think I think that Trump is going to outleft the Democrats and leave Pelosi in the dust.
It's amazing,
nice.
Dude.
I feel like someone's just going to talk him out of that, though. That's probably what's going to happen.
That's right.
Is you'll say that out loud, and then someone in a back room will be like, "Okay, no."
True. Yeah.
We do that.
His handlers.
Yeah. We got Moscow Mitch or Cocaine Mitch. I think is a lot more fun to call him that.
Turtleneck Mitch.
Yeah, god damn, that he has the most smooth and yet wrinkly skin of anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It's a very peculiar looking individual. All right, Marco, what's your prediction?
By next week, I will have gained an extra chromosome, and
an extra
really, that's about
chromosome.
it. That's about it. I can't think of anything else.
Fair enough. What about you, Neononi?
I'm starting to really hear about a lot of food shortages, and I've been looking on Amazon, and they're just completely out of anything from their pantry section, and anything you could find is just
interesting.
Yeah, I'm concerned about striking causing supply chain shortages, which are going to fuck everything up.
But I'm not trying to sound like the class of the asshole here, but I'm thinking that part of the quick shortages, like the spike in shortages, might be because the first of the month is just here, and a lot of people got their
the EBT,
or WIC. I know that Amazon accepts that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that within a week or so, at least that aspect of it will start to kind of normalized, and there'll be more access to some of the food items online and in stores, markets.
Well, the only one that can stop strikes is Amazon. I mean, really, they're the only ones that can really solve it. I mean, it's on the business itself to actually change that.
Well, and it seems like all it really takes, it's like most companies that aren't facing these kinds of problems are the ones that are offering hazard pay, which it seems so obvious to do this right now. It's like literally grocery store workers
totally reasonable.
Yeah. So because like, I mean, why, like, even if you're unemployed, it's like, I was at Trader Joe's the other day, and I don't think they're letting the workers wear masks because it's kind of freaky to the customers, right?
Yeah.
So they're really unprotected, and so they should be getting paid more to potentially expose themselves to this. I mean, obviously, so you have to make the risk
some kind of federal government to enforce things like that, because otherwise, just like in Canada, if you don't have oversight otherwise, then it's just, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and there's always going to be people that feel like they might be able to make more money otherwise. And I mean, they're probably right in a lot of cases. I mean, imagine Amazon might be able to, I mean, isn't Jeff Bezos like significantly richer now during this crisis than he was before?
Yeah, I heard Amazon is blowing up right now.
Yeah.
Anybody that's still open will be exorbitantly rich. And so they're hoping that they don't have to actually raise anybody's pay, because by all means they don't actually want to cut into their profit at all. So they're willing to sacrifice safety.
Yeah, I just got a joke from someone I work with. They said this my hazard paycheck looks a lot similar to my regular paycheck. So.
It's like a couple dollars more. It's like
it's only like $2.
Yeah,
in a lot of.
Well, what's Trader Joe's paying right now? It's like
15 to 17, I think.
Yeah, I mean 17.
They pay $15 an hour just minimum.
Well, if you're hiring now, it's a lot more. But if you already work at a place, it's probably pretty slim. That's my feeling, because like places like I've heard like employees that work at like grocery stores and shit. They like if they already work there, then the pay is nominal. But if like I'm looking at like other jobs that are hiring now is like, and then they're paying like double what they normally would. So I mean, if you're hiring now, I think they're much more willing to give you a lot of money. But if they already have you by the balls and they know they can kind of just fuck with you, they're not going to give you that much.
I feel like you're in a good position to bargain at that point, though.
One would hope.
No, I mean, if you strike, but it's hard to strike, right?
Yeah. Well, the grocery stores have already done that here before.
Yeah, they'll just tell you that you're incoherent and that you've been violating.
Right.
Violating.
And they'll just take away all the.
With him.
You betrayed.
He was on Jimmy Dore. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
What aspect of him was incoherent? Did he just say like axe instead of ass?
No, he was perfectly.
No, he was
eloquent. He's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah. All right. So we got these doomsday predictions. So what could potentially be some positive outcomes out of this whole thing?
You guys could get help. You guys could get universal health care.
We could.
UBI is one of them.
Maybe. Yeah.
Sure.
If it's being implemented in the short term, it might be a possibility in the long term.
I don't even know how I feel about that. To be honest, like obviously I'm probably the most socialist person on the panel at the moment. For me, my thing with governments is it's more important for governments to offer services than it is to offer money, because money is not necessarily inherently valuable. Like its value fluctuates.
Sure.
So it's more important to that, to me, that's more my.
Yeah, I would appreciate Medicare for all more than I would appreciate UBI.
Yeah, Medicare for all you can count on in terms at least a little bit more than a UBI. Which if inflation, if everybody's right about hyperinflation, then UBI might not necessarily be a good thing. Right. It's hard to say. I do think that there is more wiggle room than people necessarily want to believe. I think that the cynicism of, if we give people money, then it innately is going to cause hyperinflation. And I'm like, I just don't necessarily buy that completely, especially for such a limited period of time. Because if it's just during this crisis, I think that the grain storages, like, you know what I mean? Like the grain silos, I should say, like the amount of food that the states must have is definitely more than it needs.
It's immense.
I would say that's
let's hope so.
The case in most places.
Marco, do you have any positive predictions, or are you all doom and gloom?
Probably mostly on the doom and gloom side. I mean, there's positive stuff, right? But if I were to say it, I sound like a total fucking ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
do you mean just population thinning?
Yeah, exactly. You know,
Yeah.
when you start getting to the Depop thing, you really start sounding like a fucking monster. But I mean, the plus side is my commute to work might be lighter.
Yeah.
So there's
Hey.
that. Because, in all honesty, I'm such a selfish cunt that like my time is literally worth more than 30% of the population of America. And my relative comfort to go and come as I please and not have to fucking see like seriously, like I have daydreams about this, right? Where I'm driving in bumper to bumper Houston traffic, and it is like, you know what? If 30% of this shit was lighter, that'd be all right, and I might be getting my wish. So hey,
Yeah, I mean, we definitely felt it here. It was I had to drive up to LA right before I lost my job, and there's like an area on like like there's Twin Towers, which is like the main prison in downtown LA. Right when you hit the freeway in that area, it just gridlocks always, and I sailed right through it on a weekday and was like, this is weird and kind of nice. And I do think, like, even if it's not necessarily, if you don't want to take the ghoulish tactic of population thinning, which, I mean, let's be real, like, global population is not tenable in the way that it's growing. It really does make the people that say they want to go to Mars not seem that crazy. But the other part of it is what could actually end up happening is I do think that people driving to a location to work is going to like reduce considerably.
Huge, yeah.
Which could potentially end up freeing that up. So,
I had a conversation.
Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
About that with a lady that I work for, and even she, wealthy lady, was even saying that she was hoping that her, like teledoctoring and stuff would pick up, so she didn't have to go, she didn't have to go and expose herself, to all these people in the doctor's office if she just needs, and that's something that you talked about before on the podcast.
Yeah,
too, so.
and it's kind of crazy. I have an appointment with a new doctor for something, and he automatically had me set up a video chat function because he's just like, and like after we end up doing this so many times, we're like, if they were to ask you to come in again, you're going to be like, well, why? So I think that
exactly.
And why do they want it anyway? It's like because then they have to, so I think that that's going to be another positive aspect that could, without having to kill people, it would reduce the amount of just general congestion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Well, also,
in my next job.
Sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just rambling on like an old man.
No, that's fine.
In my next job, I'm for sure going to ask basically for what I'm working now, which is I'm only 2 days on site. Monday and Friday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I work from home. And so I'm either going to ask for 3 days work from home remote or 2 weeks on site and then 2 weeks off. Cause it's been, for every adult job I've had, you just be there, you're there Monday through Friday. And now it's really getting to the point that that's horse shit.
Right. Well, and they've done plenty of studies. I forgot the guy who started WordPress. He is like a big advocate of people working remotely, and he said like basically what he was saying is that it's kind of like a human psychological experiment where people don't really get very much work done when they're being like, the more restrictions people have on an environment, meaning you have to like sit in a cubicle from 9 to 5, they get less work done. But when you have your office at home and you're expected to do it from home, you feel this like personal guilt for not actually doing it because you have control over your environment. And I think that psychologically makes sense to me. And so, potentially we could end up in that scenario. So, Nianoni, what is your positive prediction if you have any?
Well, I think the new left's kind of weird immigration madness as far as, kind of open borders and medical healthcare for all and all that kind of thing. I think that's just going to be flatly rejected by both the left and the right, voters. So I kind of see that becoming just something that we can't do.
Okay, well, I feel like the representative of the new left. I don't think that the connection you're making between open borders and universal healthcare is actually broadly.
No.
What he's talking Sanders base is not really something that they would agree with.
No, but
I don't think open borders.
Literally, Dallas. Literally, in the last debate, Bernie Sanders said that we should be giving illegal immigrants free healthcare.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that.
You do agree with that?
Well, see, the thing is there's a distinction where we're making here where. If you have a workforce in your country, that I do think you have some amount of responsibility for them.
if they live in your country and they're working and they're paying taxes to a certain degree, because in a big sense, these people are paying more taxes into your system than the services that they're getting out of it. I mean, that is accurate. But regardless, my point is that I'm not saying that means that I want an open, like, that I believe in this sort of neoliberal open border free trade policy that it doesn't protect workers. I actually think that there's a huge problem with the fact that we have this kind of illegal immigrant workforce in the States. Like, I don't agree with that on a basic principle, but I think that from the Bernie Sanders position, it's more that that's just a reality that he's acknowledging, and that those people should be treated humanely.
The problem is that it's so many steps that he's ignoring that if you set this precedent, it doesn't. You need to have the conversation about like stopping the flow before you even have that conversation. And they're in a weird, like the liberals are in a weird corner where they can't talk about closing borders, and then all like they have to. They're stuck. And so it's like if he sets him getting on the stage and saying that twice sets this fucking ridiculous precedent, especially if we're going to be like looking to like realistically, if we're looking to give universal health care and then also giving UBI, we cannot have any border, like a porous border at all. It just can't happen.
Right. But the solution of that is not, the solution of that is more foreign aid than it is border restrictions. I mean, it's stabilizing regions that are completely unstable, and also putting in place restrictions in terms of labor that doesn't, because like in the current U.S. system, it's innately based on the idea that you're going to have foreign labor. I mean, that's what your farms are intendingly, their entire ability to even pick their crops is based on that labor, based on that cheap foreign labor that's technically illegal or not. At least not citizenry, like not actually American citizens. So I do think that if you're going to have those people, and if someone gets their arm cut off by a thresher in America while they're working here, that they should receive medical care. I don't think that that's an unreasonable thing to think.
Well, they will. They will.
If I'm picking crops in America and I get injured, I do think that you should have to take care of those people.
They don't get turned away. And the fact is, like, one of the biggest
don't get turned away, but that's another problem, is that your medical system is based on the emergency room and not based on preventative measures, because you could save so much money if you didn't constantly force people to the bleeding edge right before they die. That's why everything costs so much, is that you end up with poor people that can't afford their heart medication or whatever, whatever it happens to be for that individual, and then are forced aren't able to see a doctor until they're literally about to die, and then they have to go to an emergency room, and it costs way more because you have to pay those people in the emergency room far more than you would have to pay a doctor just to see a patient.
It's hard for me to have any good faith discussions about preventative medicine when our country is so fucking fat. And so
none of the people picking the berries, none of the illegal immigrants are fat.
Oh,
they're not.
Plenty of them are.
No, but if I'm a farm worker, I'm not fat.
Yeah, you
are.
I don't know. A lot of them are. Latinos are some of the most obese people in this country. It's just true.
Sure, but do those people work on farms?
Yeah.
Those people using back-breaking manual labor, and are they unhealthy as a result? I mean, I don't know. That seems odd to me, but okay.
Yeah, you gotta take my word on that one. But
I mean, obviously, I could acknowledge that the manual or having a very physical lifestyle doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your weight, because ultimately, it's more about your diet than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. So sorry, Neononi, I think you kind of got cut off. So but I think that I think what you were talking about in terms of immigration is just in terms of that the open border scenario based on the social programs that we could be enacting.
My point really wasn't about the actual. My point was about the candidates and the politicians and what they're basically offering everything in this kind of ideal. Everybody can come in, everybody gets everything kind of thing. It's not, in which I don't think even they believe is realistic. Right. My whole point is that the good that can come from this is I think we're now at a point where both sides, where the left and the right, the constituents are just not going to be in the mood to hear that, because the reality is we're not going to have the resources to take care of ourselves, let alone anybody who comes in here. So I just think the fact that can no longer be something that is this kind of selling point for their campaigns is going to be
At that
tremendously.
point, you can't really afford to have those farms then, morally speaking, because if you're just going to treat people like slaves. I mean, I'm just saying, like, there is
You're
a give
assuming
and
everybody
take
who comes here to work.
Sure,
and
but there are certain people that don't receive the same benefits from the government, but they're still paying money into your tax system. I mean, like, they don't receive the same benefits that they put into it. That's like,
I think that's also a misnomer. I mean, it's like plenty of people that I know, and like I worked in restaurants for a lot of years when I was growing up. Like, a lot of the people that were working there that were illegal were using fake documentation, fake papers, and were not paying taxes on the income they were getting.
No, I'm not. Well, I mean, if you're working though, you're paying taxes because your salaries are,
they're paying sales tax, but they're not paying federal or
we're talking about illegal, strictly illegal under the table workers,
which is
workers,
a lot of it.
No. But if we're talking about like major farms, like, those people, if they're on visas, then they are.
They're not on visas.
Well, who are we talking?
They're not illegal.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
Then they're illegal. I understand, but I'm still saying that at that point, somebody has to be accountable for those people if you have them in your country.
Well, to kind of give, like, so basically what we found is like the cost and also the ethical repercussions of deporting the 11 million people here, and that's a conservative estimate, it's not something we can really pull off anyway. So, like, I mean, the conversation about some sort of amnesty, I mean, I'm kind of open to it in a sense, but it's like the idea has to be like, okay, if we do this, it's a one-time thing and it's never fucking happening again, and the border is fucking closed for business. So it's like,
that's happened though. That happened under Reagan, and it didn't work.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's kind of an unfuckable problem, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, because you want to have it both ways. You want to benefit from the labor, but also you don't want to actually take care of the people that are in the country. You want to treat them as a secondary class, just like Rome did, as cheap labor.
I mean, if you funnel, I mean, because like what these people are getting paid is not less than generally minimum wage, or else they would find another gig where they would get it. But it's like, so a lot of people that are on welfare, for example, if we had like job programs to get those people off of those things and into the jobs that these people are taking from them, I mean, it just kind of is like, it's not this argument is just kind of, it doesn't really go anywhere because there's really no solution to it. And again, like, but I think what Nianoni's point is just more so that, like, the people who are saying the things they're saying about what they want to do for illegal immigrants, they haven't been honest, and they're just lying for the sake of getting their constituents excited about what they're saying. But now they're going to be forced to be honest. Am I misinterpreting what you're saying, Nianoni?
Exactly. Yeah, that could. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, and I think that ultimately, we'll leave it on this note, and then we'll end this. Is just like, I think that radical honesty is going to be something that's going to be a reality in this new future, and even for the people that haven't wanted to tell the truth for 30, 40 years. So that's going to be good, I think.
Double tap.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we
second to that, like, you can't even get health care for your actual citizens. So in terms of it being politically possible, I don't think that it is in the States at all. I can agree with you there.
We'll find out. Anyway, we're gonna let you all go, and then we'll do another one of these on maybe Sunday.
Sure.
Yeah, if you can.
I gotta work all weekend, but we'll see. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think Sunday would be fine. I can do the evening.
All right. So just follow. If you follow all the things, you'll see when we do it again, and then we will see you guys next time.
All right. See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Okay. So, I guess we'll just end the broadcast as well, but.
Yeah. Let me get this to go away. 1 second.
Yeah.
Go away.
No problem.
There we go.
Yeah. Very cool. We had our first troll.
Yeah. Tom was calling him Zoom bomber.
Zoom
Not my
bomber.
creation. What the FBI is actually calling people who interfere with Zoom meetings. Very interesting.
I am so bored by that last 5 minutes because I have no knowledge on the immigration issue. I honestly have no cares in the world about it. It doesn't keep me up at night, so that's why I was pretty silent towards the end there.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's kind of what I wanted to end it. Is it just kind of, it doesn't really go anywhere.
There's nowhere to go.
No,
with it.
Because it's like realistically, it would be great if we didn't have this problem, but we can't. It's been decades of us creating this problem. In tons of different administrations, and so it's like I said, it's a kind of an unfuckable problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. That's why I literally don't say anything on it.
All right, everyone. We love you all.
All right, see you guys.
We'll see you next
time.
Love you. Goodbye.
This is all wrong. Basket.